Happy 4th of July, happy Independence Day, and of course, happy birthday, America. I am pleased and honored to be able to give this keynote speech, and I thank Historic New Harmony and the University of Southern Indiana for this privilege. As a great-great-great-great-granddaughter of Robert Owen, I hope to continue his legacy, and I hope you all will too. Without further ado, we meet to commemorate the period when the inhabitants of this new world attained the power to withdraw from the control of the old world, and to form a government for themselves. This event is likely to prove in its consequences as important as any which has occurred in ancient or modern times. It has been the means of preparing a new era in the history of man, and of producing such a change of circumstances as will admit of the introduction of measures to change entirely the character and condition of the human race. The revolution in America, sanctioned and secured by the Declaration of Independence in 1776, gave to a people advancing towards civilization the first opportunity of establishing a government which would by decrees permit them to acquire that greatest of blessings, mental liberty. This was indeed a most important point gained. It was the first time such privilege had been ever possessed by mankind. Its fruits have been visible in the gradual advance towards mental liberty, which has been made during the half-century which this day completes from that memorable event. But I conclude it will be in the next half-century, now about to commence, that the wondering world will learn justly to estimate the value of the high achievements which was then attained. It was not the mere political liberty then conquered from the old world that was the real victory gained by the inhabitants of these vast regions, for political power had been often wrested from one party and obtained by another. But it was the right which they thereby acquired and used to establish the liberty of freely extending thought upon all subjects, secular and religious, and the right to express those thoughts openly, so soon as the existing prejudices derived from the old world could be so far removed as to direct the mind of the multitude to investigate facts and reject the mysteries of disordered imaginations, to teach them to discern the value of the former as they always direct to the development of real knowledge, and instruct them rightly to estimate the evil of the latter, as they lead to those errors which have made man a compound of folly and a recipient for misery. Yes, my friends, the Declaration of Independence in 1776 prepared the way to secure to you mental liberty, without which man never can become more than a mere localized being, with powers to render him more miserable and degraded than the animals which he has been taught to deem inferior to himself. It is true the right of mental liberty is inherent in our nature, for while man exists in mental health, no human power can deprive him of it. But until the Revolution of 1776, no people had acquired the political power to permit them to use that right, when their minds should be so far freed from early imbibed prejudices as to allow them to derive benefits from its practice. No nation except this even yet possesses the political power to enable the people to use the right of mental freedom. This right, this invaluable right, you now enjoy by the Constitution obtained for you by Washington, Franklin, Henry, and the other worthies associated with them. You have indeed abundant reason to rejoice in this victory, obtained over the thick mental darkness which till then covered the earth. The collision of mind which produced that victory, and which was produced by it, elicited a spark of light, which enabled the prominent actors in those scenes to discover a glimpse, through the long night of error and misrule, with which the inhabitants of all earth had been previously afflicted. Still, however, these men whose minds were in advance of the age in which they lived were encircled by the prejudices which they and their fathers brought from Europe, and which had descended to the inhabitants of those regions through many ages of despotism, superstition, and ignorance. And although a few of these highly gifted men of the Revolution saw stronger and clearer light at the distance, as they supposed, of some ages before them, they were too conscious of the extent of the old errors around them to attempt more than to secure the means in the Constitution which they formed, by which their successors might work their way to the superior distant light and gain for themselves the innumerable advantages which real mental liberty could bestow upon them. It is for you and your successors now to press onward, with your utmost speed, in the course which, by so many sacrifices for your benefit, they have opened for you. They discovered some of the innumerable impositions which had been practiced on your predecessors. They saw more of them than, in the temper of those times, they could venture publicly to expose. But they have left such decided proofs of their own feelings and views regarding them that none who reflect can doubt the strong desire they felt to attack and destroy still more of them, and, if possible, to annihilate all the arts and mysteries by which the few had so long held a pernicious despotic sway and control over the many. These wise men were withheld from going beyond the line determined upon at the Revolution, apprehending that, by attempting to gain a greater advance upon ignorance and superstition, and in doing so they might put to hazard the benefits they found they could secure, and herein they evinced their knowledge of the times in which they lived and acted. My friends, it surely cannot be your wish that any good and great cause should be effected only by halves, and more especially when that which remains to be done is beyond all calculation the more important. There is a noble object before us to be won by some party or another, in this or in some other country. It is no less than the destruction of the threefold causes which deprive man of mental liberty, which compel him to commit crimes, and to suffer all the miseries which crime can inflict. Could we but gain this object, soon would rational intelligence, real virtue, and substantial happiness be permanently established among men. Ignorance, poverty, dependence, and vice would be forever banished from the earth. It is difficult to say which of these grand sources of all crime ought to be placed first or last, for they are all so intimately interlinked and woven together by time that they cannot be separated without being destroyed. Each one is necessary to support the other two. This formidable trinity, compounded of ignorance, superstition, and hypocrisy, is only demon or devil that ever has or most likely ever will torment the human race. Upon the experience of life devoted to investigation of these momentous subjects, I fearlessly now declare to you from a conviction as strong as conviction is in the human mind that this compound of ignorance and fraud is the real and only cause of all crime and misery arising from crime, which can be found in the human society. For nearly 40 years, I have been employed heart and soul, day by day, almost without ceasing, in preparing the means and arranging the circumstances to enable me to give the death blow to the tyranny and despotism which for unnumbered ages past have held the human mind spellbound in chains and fetters of such mysterious forms and shapes that no mortal hand dared approach to set the suffering prisoner free. Nor has the fullness of time for the accomplishment of this great event been completed until within this hour, and such has been the extraordinary course of events that the Declaration of Political Independence in 1776 has produced its counterpart, the Declaration of Mental Independence in 1826. Rejoice with me, my friends, that your mental independence rests now as secure as your political independence, for the overwhelming power of truth over error is such that as soon as arrangements can be formed to admit of the full development of truth to the world, and it is once publicly promulgated, no art or falsehood or force can ever afterwards return it back into forgetfulness or unteach the truths which it has taught. Under the circumstances in which this mental revolution has been made, no human power can undo or render nugatory that which has been done. This truth has passed from me beyond the possibility of recall. It has been already received into your minds. Speedily it will be heard throughout America, and from thence it will pass north and south, east and west, as far as language is known. And almost as fast as it shall be conveyed, human nature will recognize and receive it. In countries in which ignorance and despotism hold their sway over the multitude, arts will be used to keep it from being heard among them, but neither armies nor barriers of any kind can now prevent a great and important truth from finding its way, by some means or another, into the darkest recesses of error and deception. Rejoice then with me, my friends, that this light is now set upon a hill, for it will increase daily more and more until it shall be seen, felt, and understood by all the nations of the earth. And here we now are, as near perhaps as we can be in the center of the United States, even as it were like the little grain of mustard seed. But with these great truths before us, with the practice of the social system, as soon as it shall be well understood among us, our principles will, I trust, spread from community to community, from state to state, and from continent to continent, until this system and these truths shall overshadow the whole earth, shedding fragrance and abundance, intelligence and happiness upon all of the sons of men. I would that you and those who now live in this and other countries could partake for many years of all of these enjoyments. Thank you, and once again, happy 4th of July.